and these are my tops and bottoms for July. Tops and bottoms was a format that I started out last month in order to let me do wrap-up videos which let me talk about my favourites and my very least favourites in one video without it taking half a lifetime. So let's see if we can continue to be successful in that regard. I'm going to start off my tops with my favourite book from the month, and indeed now one of my favourite books ever. And that is Jane Steele by Lindsay Fay. Here's my thing. I hate retellings. I don't like retellings of classic books or popular books, and I don't like retellings of fairy tales, and I know that that puts me in the incredible minority on BookTube, and I'm okay with that because there are like a million other things out there that I can read. We don't have to agree on the one thing. But that is the reason that I stayed away from Jane Steele for so long, because this is technically a retelling of Jane Eyre, except not really. Let me explain. In Jane Steele's world, which is our historical England, the book Jane Eyre exists as a very popular fiction book which Jane Steele herself loves. But Jane Steele is a very different person from Jane Eyre, and instead of being subjected to the cruelty of men and putting up with it, she murders them. She murders quite a lot of them, in fact. And then she spots an advertisement for a governess position in the old country estate that she used to live on when she was a very young girl, and she takes it into her mind that she is going to get herself that governess position come hell or high water, because Jane Steele was brought up knowing that she very well might be the heir to that estate. Except when she gets there, she discovers that the estate is owned now by a Dr. Charles Thornfield and his entire Sikh household that he has brought back from war with him. This was a perfect book for me, and I do not say that lightly. The plot of this rips along at a furious page-turning speed that I could not keep up with. I literally could not read fast enough to find out what was going on. This is an eternal frustration of my life. When I get into books like this, I'm just like, come on, I need to know. But at the same time, there were so many times that I just wanted the world to stop and let me wallow in the interactions between some of these characters who are so incredibly brilliantly drawn. They are all, every one of them, flawed in some way. Some of them are seriously screwed up. Some of these characters have seen some awful things in their lives, and yet they do not let that be the thing that defines them. They are complicated, they are complex, and they are funny as hell. Speaking of complex, there is a moment in the middle of this book, right in the middle at the turning point of this book, that I had to put it down and physically sit and sob. And I can count on both hands the number of books that I have read in my adult lifetime that have made me have such a physical reaction, that have made me actually burst into tears because it was so sad. This book also does some genius righting of wrongs in terms of Jane Eyre. It gives the people of colour in the book not only agency but fully rounded character. It does not at any point make them a victim of circumstance, but instead explains the really complex background that they have come from and how it fits into this world. And it made me so emotional. It brings in the real world that was happening at this time in England and abroad, and it mashes it all together so that you don't just get a love story, you get a story of people. And viewer, I love it. Seems really difficult to hold anything else up to what I have just called a completely perfect book, but no, I have two other tops for the month which were also magnificent. Well, technically I have four. I will explain. My next top is technically a series, and that is the Wayward Children series by Shawn McGuire. The reason that I have three of these is because I read them all back to back this month, and now they have become sort of one entity in my head, and I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I read it like that. I am so glad, but now I am also burning for the next book, which doesn't come out until January. Thanks, universe. We begin the series at Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children, which is a school which essentially caters to children who have been kicked out of portal fantasy worlds. Book 1 follows Nancy, who has been dropped out of her world, and she's only been out of it for a couple of weeks. Her parents have heard about this school as a place that treats this special kind of mental disorder where kids believe that they've been to fantasy worlds, and they send her there to fix her. So this series is dark, yo. Some of this stuff is almost like sending their kids to straight Bible camp to try and pray away the gay. None of these books are over 200 pages, so it seems crazy that so much plot and so many characters can coexist in the one place and it still makes sense. But that is why they are epic. These books do a couple of things really, really well. So the madcap adventures and the high dose of fantasy that you get takes me back to the mood that I was in when I first discovered Harry Potter. That's not a recommendation, I don't know what is. But the diversity in these books, gender, sexuality, race, everything, there is so much stuff across the spectrum in these books. I cannot possibly tell you, and it's all just presented as commonplace. There's no tokenism, there's no, oh look, another diverse character. There is just life. And because these kids have had some really weird experiences, they accept each other's differences in a way that you don't get in a normal high school. And I think that's the magic of these books, is that even when you're kicked out of that world that accepts you, they then have found another world which also accepts them. There's also a lot of really bright, sharp humour. There is a little bit of social commentary in here, and there's a couple of things that Shawn McGuire touches on that I just want to like pound my desk and be like, yes girl! These are grab you by the throat and make you listen books. They are epic. You should read them. My last top for the month is one that I'm going to mention really only briefly, because you are only going to be interested in it if you are interested in the production that it comes from, and that is Hamilton the Revolution, which is about Hamilton the musical from its inception, from Lynn reading Ron Chernow's Hamilton biography on holiday, through to the pitching, the casting, the making it an actual thing, and finally the actual release of it on Broadway. I don't actually have the words for this book. The thing that I really want to say about this fundamentally is I have owned a lot of books over the years that are books about things. Books about how the film, the movie, the play came to be, and you know, with pictures from the production and interviews from the cast and stuff like that. I own a lot of Harry Potter books in that regard, and they are all kind of coffee table books. So the kind of books that you would look through, read one or two things, and maybe it would take you a couple of years to read to the end, and maybe you would never read to the end. This is not one of those books. This is a book that you start at the beginning, and from the minute that you start it, you get a lump in your throat. Not only was it compulsively readable, but it moved me, it made me cry, it gave me hope. It again does a lot of commentary on race, especially in America. It does a lot of political commentary, obviously, and it does a lot of commentary about the power of individual people to make an unthinkable thing exist. It's a reminder that actions speak louder than words, but if the words aren't there in the first place, then nothing ever happens. If you love the show, read the book. Now, those were some hefty tops for the month, but this is definitely a hefty bottom. Can you tell that I'm nervous talking about this book? Because I am. This one is going to be one of the most unpopular opinions I have ever had on my channel. I think this is a beloved book here on BookTube. In fact, it's not just on BookTube, it's in general. It's now part of curriculums. It has won tons and tons of awards, and I just didn't get the hype, guys. I'm really sorry. This is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, and I tried, guys. I promise I really tried, but I didn't like it. So you might remember that the reason that I read this book was because last month Kirsty from The Tea Is Also Cursed, my bookish partner in crime, picked my TBR for me while she was here, and this was one of the first ones that she grabbed off my shelves. She was horrified that I had not read this book yet. I have actually owned this book for a good number of years and I have never managed to get past chapter 3, and I could not put my finger on the thing that was stopping me, but I couldn't do it. This is a book about Aristotle and Dante, who are two Mexican American teens who meet in 1987 and essentially change each other's realities. It's a book about two young boys from very different sides of the track coming together. It's kind of a book about philosophy and it's also sort of a love story. I started to listen to this one on audiobook because it is also narrated by Lin-Manuel Miranda, you know, like Hamilton fame, like I've just said. And I have to say that really helped the book's case. I didn't hate everything about this book. The first third of this book, in fact, I posted really quickly on social media and was like, okay guys, you can all shut up. I get the hype. I'm sorry I didn't read it until now. I'm addicted. The first third of this book was great. I loved being introduced to the two boys. They felt very much like boys in 1987 who were kind of bored and trying to find something to do with their time and who accidentally found each other. All of that seemed great. It wasn't one of those weird coincidental meetings. It felt like everything clicked. And the sort of philosophy that's pattered through the start of the book, like some things kind of happen for a reason and you never really know what they are until they happen. I loved all of that. I was totally there for it. And then a big event happened and it took a serious nosedive. It's impossible to tell you exactly what happens without giving you spoilers, so I'm going to be a little bit vague, but there is an incredibly dramatic event that happens after the first third and Ari and Dante are separated. They're separated right at the point where we are aware that there's going to be an inevitable coming together of these two boys, that they are slowly falling in love in a time where that was not really accepted, in a community where that was absolutely not accepted, coming from backgrounds where that would not be accepted. And we know that this is going to happen, we know that it's inevitable, and so when this event happens, the event itself I thought was really poorly written and poorly handled. I did not buy that it happened and then we woke up and then life was a very different thing. I didn't buy it at all. And I felt like separating the characters at that point was really artificial. It felt like the author was trying to add drama where drama already existed. I wanted to see the drama that was inherent in the coming together of these two boys and how they handled it. I didn't want to see the drama of what happened when the two of them went to totally different high schools, had totally different experiences and communicated through letter. And that's how I know that I really didn't like this book, because I love epistolary stuff in novels. I can read an entire novel written like that quite happily. I love when letters or emails or, you know, IM communication or anything else like that happens in a novel, and I really hated it. It felt forced. It didn't feel like the characters' real voices. It started to feel very like a narrator, and that was where the writing started to bother me as well, because up until that point I kind of could see what the author was trying to do, and I think that's the whole thing for this for me. I can see what the author tried to do and I just think he missed. It just didn't work for me, guys. I was just bored. I was bored. And finally, my last bottom for the month is The Mystery of a Hansom Cab by Fergus Hume. This one is about a gentleman who is killed in the back of a hansom cab, which is one of these things. It's kind of a locked door mystery in that he was in the back of the hansom cab and he died, and then the hansom cab driver was like, "Ah, there's a dead person in my car," and that's where we pick it up. I loved the premise, I loved the setting, I did not love the execution. I did not like the first third of this one, where it felt very script-like and it felt very question and answer format, and it turns out that the reason for this is because that Fergus Hume was actually a playwright and this was his first novel, so he was used to writing in a way which was very dialogue, 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 stage direction, and that's exactly what the first bit of this book felt like. It felt very much like he had the setting in his head and he had the characters in his head, and he just kind of filled in the bits that went in between, and I didn't like it. The second reason that I think that this one didn't work for me was because I was also reading The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins, and that one had my heart and it completely ran away with me, and it's another example, it's earlier than The Hansom Cab, but it's another example of the time of a really good mystery, and I feel like it's a better mystery, and that maybe was what happened there. So those were my tops and bottoms for July. Have you read any of these books? Are you now going to purchase any of these books because I have convinced you that you must read Jane Steele right now? What did you read in July? Did you read anything that I should absolutely pick up? If you did, help a sister out and don't keep it to yourself, and tell me about it in the comments. We shall talk there, and I shall speak to you later. Bye! And yes, the top book was a dummy book to stand in for Hansom Cab, in case any eagle-eyed among you are like, that's not a book you talked about. It's like Blue Peter television magic, don't ruin it.